Week 38. Day 260, on courage. People who seem to act courageously usually have specific consequences in mind. They know the consequences both of acting and not acting. They've decided that the consequences of not acting are worse than the consequences of what we consider to be their courageous acts. Harry Brown. Here's a little trick to inspire courage to make a change. Prepare a list of the consequences of acting and not acting. List all the great things that will happen if you change and all the bad things that will happen, or keep on happening, if you decide not to act. Aim to make the list of the consequences of not acting so terrifying that the only valid choice would be to act. In essence, that's what courageous people often do in a split second. They see something that fills them with fear and do it anyway because ultimately not facing their fears is an even scarier proposition. For example, if you're afraid to change your job, imagine what will happen if you don't act. You'll have to continue working in a job you may even hate. Day by day, week by week, it will probably get even worse. The same faces, the same annoying tasks, the same frustrating boss. Isn't that prospect scarier than looking for a new job? Day 261, on giving up the last word. Consciously giving up the last word is a secret prayer because the you that wants the last word isn't really you at all. It's that dark spirit of one-upmanship, that dark spirit of combativeness. Guy Finley. When having a verbal fight, it's tempting to argue your case until you convince your opponent to share your stance. Unfortunately, it rarely, if ever, happens. He or she who has the last word doesn't succeed in anything except for making the other person feel worse. Consequently, here's another challenge for your self-control. Instead of always trying to one-up somebody else, give up having the last word. Don't try to prove that you're better, you aren't, or that your opinion is right. Even if it is, you won't convince anybody by arguing with them. Agree to disagree and change the topic to something more pleasant. Exercising self-restraint this way will not only improve your relationships with others, it will also help you improve your self-control by learning how to resist one of the strongest temptations, to continue to argue your case when you're convinced of your rightness. Day 262, on fragility caused by comfort. Diseases of civilization result from the attempt by humans to make life comfortable for ourselves against our own interest, since the comfortable is what fragilizes. Nassim Taleb. There's no doubt that modern comforts make our lives easier. However, while the benefits are clear, there are also disadvantages of living in so much comfort. We rarely get to experience the discomfort our ancestors had been dealing with on a daily basis, and consequently, we are less able to handle it when it manifests in our lives. That's why I've mentioned more than several times throughout the book how important it is to voluntarily put yourself in uncomfortable situations. One additional thought that is related to this topic is to think of experiencing discomfort as a vaccine. For example, I've fasted so many times on so many occasions that now whenever I find myself in a situation in which I'm forced to fast for some reason, I don't mind it. I've essentially immunized myself against the need to eat often, and this has made me a stronger person. The immunization you get from practicing discomfort quickly adds up, making you more resilient in all areas of life. Think of the ways in which you make yourself fragile through always choosing comfort over discomfort, and every now and then temporarily forego that comfort, in order to toughen up. Day 263, on thinking for yourself. You and you alone are the sole arbiter of the meaning in your life. The second you turn to someone and say, "What does life mean?" or, "What should my life mean?" you have slipped into a mindset that courts inauthenticity and depression. The second you agree with someone simply because of her position or reputation, whether that someone is a guru, author, cleric, parent, politician, general, or elder, you fall from the path of personal meaning maker. Eric Maisel. One of the things I emphasize in every book is that I'm not a guru, nor do I wish to be one. I don't want you to take my advice at face value, assuming that it's right simply because I shared in my book. Agreeing with somebody simply because of their position or reputation is dangerous, because you're essentially delegating your thinking process to this person. I make mistakes, you make mistakes, and even the world's most successful performers make mistakes. Moreover, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another person. For example, I often take the extreme approach, which usually works out fine for me, but might hurt another person who isn't used to pushing their limits in such a way. Granted, you won't know which approach is good for you until you test it for yourself, but it's important to think before you act and to question any advice, including the tips you find in this book. Finally, don't make the mistake of letting others decide the meaning of your life. You, and only you, can figure out how you want to live your life and what you want to get out of it. Following somebody else's recipe for an ideal life is a recipe for depression. Even if your dreams are considered weird by others, it doesn't make them incorrect. They're your dreams, and that's the only thing that counts for them to be valid. Day 264. On being honest with yourself about your feelings. Always be honest with yourself about how you are feeling, no matter what kinds of emotions might be building up inside of you. Pretending to ourselves that we are not feeling something does not make that emotion disappear. Nigel Cumberland. Pretending to yourself that you aren't feeling a temptation to cheat on your diet, waste time instead of working, or vent your anger on somebody else doesn't make those urges disappear. If anything, there's a risk that those emotions will build up inside of you and explode one day. If there's one characteristic thing about explosions, it's that they're uncontrollable. Instead of denying those emotions, observe them and seek a different outlet. Perhaps you could vent in a different way without hurting anyone. Maybe you need to schedule a cheat meal and indulge a little to avoid an unplanned cheat week. It's possible that you're overworking yourself and the temptation to take it easy is in reality your body's cry for help. Be honest with yourself about your feelings, especially those that stand in direct opposition to what you want to achieve. Remain vigilant of them and manage them instead of denying that they exist, or one day those feelings might take control of you. Day 265, on transformation taking place now. The present moment contains past and future. The secret of transformation is in the way we handle this very moment. Deet Nyut Han. The way you handle this very moment might mean nothing for you today, but in reality, each present moment is an opportunity to change your life. It all starts with one decision. Maybe you're now reading this book and wondering if you could learn how to play the guitar. It's only in this present moment that you can decide to stop reading and head to a music store, buy a guitar and start learning. In the very same moment you might glance at a bag of chips on your lap and instead of finishing it off, close it and put it in the trash. When you're going about your day, each little choice subtly affects your future. Each repetition of a negative habit reinforces it, while each repetition of a positive habit makes it more likely you'll engage in it again in the future. Personal transformation doesn't happen in the future, it's happening now. How are you making sure that you're transforming in the right direction? Day 266, on temptations and your decision what to do about them. An eye, when open, has no option but to see. The decision whether to look at a particular man's wife, however, and how, belongs to the will. And the determination whether to trust what someone says, and then, if we trust them, whether we should be angered by it, that also belongs to the will. Epictetus. When shopping, you'll undoubtedly find yourself surrounded by shelves filled with unhealthy food. However, the decision whether it lands in your shopping cart depends on you. When taking a pause from learning for a difficult exam, you might receive a message from a friend asking you to hang out. The decision as to whether you hang out or finish your coffee and resume studying is yours to make. When browsing online, looking for information to help you grow your business, you might stumble upon a cat meme or a funny video. It's within your control as to whether you waste your time on low-quality entertainment or continue your search for information. It's tempting to shift the responsibility to the external factors, but does it benefit you in any way to claim that you cheated on your diet because you happened to go through the aisle with the potato chips? Is it a legitimate excuse to say that you didn't go for a jog because there was a comfortable sofa in your living room and it demanded your attention? Do whatever you can to avoid situations that might tempt you to do something that will jeopardize your long-term goals, but if you happen to come upon them, remember that it's still your decision, and a test of your self-discipline, as to whether they will affect you negatively.